Hi, my name is Sara Hey with Bob Clements International, and I'm so excited to spend the next hour with you as we talk about reclaiming your sanity and your time. Our organization, Bob Clements International, works with dealerships just like you all around the country and the world to help you reclaim your sanity, life, and dealership and experience success like you never thought possible. Over the last year, Bob and I wrote a new book called You're the Problem and the Solution. Inside of this book, we dive into the 7 habits that we say consistently successful dealers exhibit day in and day out inside of their dealership. And one of the habits that we dive into that dealers who are on this consistent growth trajectory show us is that they manage their time well. Ooh, time management. I know there's never enough time in the day for you to do what you feel like you need to do. You go, where in the world do I start with this, Sara? How do I get to this place? I'm not only reclaiming my sanity, but also reclaiming my time. Well, my friend, let's dive into it together. If you could pick a superpower, what would it be? When I was growing up, I wanted to be a number of things. I wanted to be a dolphin trainer, I wanted to be the president, and I wanted to be a superhero. Currently, I'm not any of those things, but things could change, right? I think all of us had this experience when we were growing up where we wanted to be a superhero of sorts. We would take the blankets from our house, tie them around our neck, and run through the house where our mothers were screaming at us to stop. Nope, not your mom, just fine. Okay, that's fine too. But when I was growing up, I wanted a superpower to be invisible. I wanted to be able to hear what people were saying and they didn't know I was there. My guess is that you had your go-to superpower when you were young as well. If you could choose a superpower today, what would it be? My guess is that it would be different than what you wanted when you were a kid. Most dealers I know would probably choose the ability to have more time. An hour, 2 hours, or even 3 hours a day could make a world of difference inside of your dealership. But what would you fill it with? Would you fill it with more work, more time to get things done in the day-to-day grind of your dealership, or would you choose to spend it outside of your dealership? What I know is that dealers who have consistently shown success day in and day out have reclaimed their time, are using their time more effectively inside of their dealership, but then also using their time to do things that they love and they enjoy. Because if you just sit and fight fires all day inside of your dealership, you are on a direct and quick path to burnout. And do you know what is going to be no help to anyone inside of your dealership? Burnout. We work with dealership after dealership where the owner or manager has put so much time, energy, and effort into trying to make the dealership successful, and all they're left with at the end of the day is they are burnt out and have nothing left to give. It is up to you to make the decision that that is not going to be the trajectory for your life or your dealership, and that you are going to start making the decision that you are going to reclaim your sanity and your time inside of your dealership. I need you to stop fighting fires inside of your dealership. It wasn't long ago we were working with a dealer up in the Northeast. He said, Sara, I feel like all I do all day is deal with problems in the service department. We have a technician who is a toxic employee and so hard to be around. He rubs customers the wrong way and he rubs the other employees the wrong way too. All he did all day, that owner, was fight a fire. At another dealership in Florida who said, Sara, I feel like all that's happening all day at our parts counter is that we have frustrated employees and customers all day long, and that there's no answer that's ever good enough for any of them. That owner was fighting fires. In another situation, we had a dealer who in Oklahoma had a sales team of 6 people. All of his sales team were always coming in with mediocre sales results. He didn't know what to do, so he just kept pushing them harder and harder with no movement forward. All he was doing was fighting fires. What I need you to do is get out of this merry-go-round from hell of fighting fires and move to this place of being proactive with what you're doing. Because when you stop feeding into the chaos and the fires that are happening inside of your dealership, you are able to move to a proactive place with your time. Inside of your dealership, chaos costs you money. And the less chaos we can have, the more profit you will have. But in order to do that, we have to move from a reactive to proactive place of time management. This is one of the most powerful ways for you to reclaim your sanity. You know, the other thing that I know to be true is that it's a lot more fun to start the fires and the excitement in your dealership than put out the fires. I was doing a program not long ago, and we were talking about doing this inside of your dealership and the power of fun of starting fires versus putting them out. You know the fires I'm talking about, the excitement, the new ideas, and the ways that you can move your dealership forward. After my session, one of the dealers we've known for a long time and have come to love came up to me and he said, "Sarah, I don't want to put any more fires out, but I want to start fires in my dealership and I want to burn my shop down." Okay, that's not what I was talking about, but what I do know is it's a lot more fun to start fires than put them out. So let's make the decision as of today that we are going to move from being reactive in everything in our dealership to being proactive. Let's reclaim our sanity in our time and allow us in our dealership to move forward. I want to be clear. When we talk about taking back control of our sanity and our time, there is no magic wand, no easy button, no unicorns prancing in a field that allow you to do that. The only way that you reclaim your sanity and your time is by having boundaries and priorities. Let me explain it to you. Inside of your dealership, the things that are important to you or your priorities will dictate your boundaries. Not long ago, I was working with a dealer who said to me, "Sarah, I feel like day in and day out, I'm missing out on my kid's life. The dealership demands so much from me in regards to my time, my energy, and my attention. And I feel like I'm never getting to spend the time with my kids and that I'm going to regret it one day." He said, "Every single day, my wife has dinner on the table at 6 o'clock. My kids are there, and more often than not, I'm not there." I said to him, if that is our priority, if that is what we're working towards, being at dinner at 6 o'clock, we have to put boundaries in place to make sure that happens. Maybe that starts with saying by 5:30 every night, I'm going to leave the dealership. No ifs, ands, and buts. I don't care what's happening. There is no reason for me not to be at dinner and experiencing that time with my children. Your priorities dictate your boundaries. Another experience I had was not long ago. We were working with a dealership in Northern Ohio. This dealership was in the midst of a transition. The next generation was coming in to start helping to run the business. We were visiting with the father in this situation as his daughter was transitioning into the dealership, and we had the conversation of, what do you want this to look like? What are your priorities at the end of the day as this transition happens? He said, number one, I don't want this dealership to take my daughter's life and joy away like it has many times for me. And number two, I want to make sure at the end of the day, we're still sit around the Thanksgiving dinner table and like each other. As we went through this whole process with him, we talked about the boundaries that he and his daughter needed to have in place to make both of those things happen. We talked about the importance of setting boundaries with work and making sure that there are times that we step away and do the things that bring us joy and excitement. But we also then went and talked about the boundaries we had to put in place so that at the end of the day, when they sat down at the Thanksgiving table, they still liked each other. We talked about things like making sure that at work we only talked about work, and also saying we are not going to use nicknames, dad, or other nicknames that he would used to call his daughter inside the confines of the dealership. When we know what our priorities are, and we are solely focused on making those happen, our boundaries are what will dictate if we actually are able to achieve those priorities or not. One of the things that we have worked with time and time again with owners and managers inside of the dealership world to help take back control of your time is something we call the 1 hour challenge. The 1 hour challenge is simply this. I want you to find 1 hour a day, your best hour a day, to spend working on something that will move your dealership forward and take you from being a place of reaction to proactive time management. Now, I want you to pick the best hour of the day. If you are a night owl, I do not want you to pick 6 a.m. Listen, you and I both know that there is no amount of coffee that will get you ready to go for your best hour at 6 a.m. if you are a night owl. On the flip side, if you are a morning person where that 5 to 7 a.m. time slot is your golden hour, I don't want you to pick 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, because you and I both know that we are not going to be able to have the focus and attention that we would if we were at our best hour. Pick your best hour. Shut the door of your office or your house or wherever you are. Go to the bathroom and lock the door for an hour and focus on working on something that will move your dealership to a place of proaction versus reaction. In the midst of this hour, I want you to have a firm don't ask me policy. You know what I'm talking about. As you work inside of your dealership, the numbers of knocks on your door saying, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, we've got a customer who needs something. Hey, we've got a vendor who needs your attention. The amount of demands on your time is relentless. So the rule of thumb is unless you have to call 911, I don't want to hear about it. If you need to get an old kitchen timer and set it for an hour, do that. But over the course of an hour, I want you to focus on nothing other than the one thing that you are working on to move you to a place of proactive time management. So where do you start? How do you start this process of reclaiming your sanity and your time? Here's what I want you to do. Pull out a sheet of paper. On the top of the paper, we're going to write 3 columns. The first column, we are going to write stability. Now, under that stability column, I want you to write service, parts, and sales. The next column is going to be growth. Again, under that column, we're going to write service, parts, and sales. The third and final column is going to be accountability. And as you guessed, we're going to write service, parts, and sales. I want you to take this list and we are going to start diving into how, if I were in your shoes, I would spend my 1 hour. Let's start with stability. I want you to look at the service, the parts, and the sales, and I want you to make the determination. Were any of those departments not profitable for your business last year? Was service something that actually generated you the money you were hoping to see? What about parts? Was sales where you needed it to be? If any of the departments did not generate you a profit last year, I want you to circle its name. That's where we're going to start. Because when we talk about stability in our dealerships, I think it's so incredibly important to understand that you can grow your departments without a base of stability, but you will be picking up the pieces if you don't focus on the base. What would happen right now in your dealership if you were to grow your service department sales by 30%? Would it be something where growth would be an exciting thing, or something where you would have 30% more filers? The same question goes for parts department. What if you started doing 20% more parts? What would be your reaction? Do you have the processes in place to withstand that growth? What about sales? What if you were to get a huge order from a local government or municipality? Do you have the processes in place to withstand the increase or growth in sales? My guess is that in many situations, while you could react and make it happen, you would be burnt out and your team would be exhausted at the end of the day. When we start with a base of stability, it allows us to set ourselves up for growth so that when growth does happen, we are ready to meet it head on and only respond with more growth. So let's go through department by department, if I were in your shoes, how I would start working on stability. Let's start with service first. When we're in the service department, if we are starting to talk about stability, the very first thing I would do if I were in your shoes is we would start tracking time. We want to know where every 10th of an hour or 6 minutes is going in your service department. 10th of an hour or 6 minutes is our inventory. Just like you have oil and oil filters inside of your parts department, what we are selling in our service department is time. So just like you would keep track of your oil or oil filters, we need to make sure we know where all of our time is going. Think about the effect of a 10th of an hour or 6 minutes. Over the course of the day, how easy is it for your technicians to lose a 10th of an hour here or a 10th of an hour there? You know what I'm talking about. They go out to the lot to look for a unit and they lose a 10th of an hour. They're sitting there trying to help a customer load or unload their trailer, 10th of an hour. All throughout the day, there are all of these little 10th of an hour things that take away your technician from doing what they do best and what we need them focused on, which is turning a wrench. So we've got to start making sure that we know where all of the time is going. Let's use this example. If we were in your dealership, and let's say that you have a labor rate of $100 an hour, and one technician lost a 10th of an hour here and a 10th of an hour there, and over the course of a day, he or she lost an hour of time. With a labor rate of $100 an hour, that means that over the course of a week, if that happened every single day, we would be looking at $500 of net profit that we lost. Most of you are open 4 weeks a month, and so that means that over the course of the month, if that 10th of an hour here and 10th of an hour there loss happened every single day, over the course of a month, we would lose about $2,000. Now let's say, for argument's sake, that you're only open 10 months a year, or you can only keep your service department busy 10 months a year. Let's take that $2,000 and multiply it by 10. That gives us $20,000 that we lost because we were not keeping track of time. And that's with one technician. What does that look like with your own posted labor rate and the technicians that you have? My guess is you're probably losing more than just 1 hour a day. If service has not been a place of profitability for you, start by making sure we are clocking in and out of all work orders in our service department. In parts, when we talk about stability, some of the key things that we need to think about in order to set us up for growth comes down to our parts margins. Our parts margins should be above MSRP in most cases. MSRP stands for Manufacturer Suggested Retail Price. And in most cases, we don't like the manufacturer's suggestion. I was at a meeting not long ago and one of the dealers came up to me after we were done talking about parts, and she said, "Sarah, I didn't know, no one ever told me that my parts were supposed to be marked up above MSRP. This is me telling you today, your parts are supposed to be marked up above MSRP. MSRP is typically determined not by some magical formula, but by turning a part 4 times over the course of the year. My guess is that you have lots of parts that you turn less than 4 times a year. As a result, we need to make sure that they are marked up above MSRP. When we talk about parts, it's an art that we need to make sure that we've got those margins right where they need to be. You as an owner or manager are going to have to spend some time really diving into where your parts margins need to be for your dealership, for your location, and for the lines and brands that you carry. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach to making sure your parts margins are right. But what I do know is that if you can get your parts margins to a place where you have them set right, as you pour the accelerant of growth on them, you will be set up for success, and it will allow you to use that as a catapult going forward. One dealership we were working with not long ago had a huge parts department. They were heavy in online parts sale, and they were doing about $6 million of parts sales every single year just through online. That's a lot of parts. We went through and started helping them tweak their margins and move them where it needed to be, and we moved their margins up about 3%. 3% of $6 million is a lot of money. My guess is that as you look at your parts margins, while you may not be doing $6 million worth of parts, 3% could still be a substantial number for you to allow you to get to a place of health inside of your parts department. If we need to find a starting point inside of our parts department to create stability so that when we do grow, it's an accelerant for growth and not causing us more headaches than joy, we've got to make sure that our parts margins are where they need to be. It's worth your time and your energy. When we talk about stability in sales, we have to focus on measuring the activity of your sales people. You and I both know that when we have a sales team in place, it's critically important that we have focused on making sure that they are actually in contact with customers on a consistent basis. We talk about touches as we're talking about salespeople. When we start working with a dealer group, we always ask, what is the requirement for your salespeople? They say something like, well, we've got a sales goal for them, or we'd like to see a certain amount of proposals come through. We say, but what about touches? Are your salespeople required to make a certain amount of touches every single day? Most of the time we get this like deer in the headlights look and they go, what in the world are you actually talking about? Here is what I want you to do. If there is not consistency in your sales department, let's start with touches. I want you to require your salespeople to touch at least 20 prospects every single day. This could be someone texting, someone emailing, someone coming in. Shoot, it could be the minivan full of kids and a mother who just needed to use your bathroom. I don't care what it is. Or it might even be a phone call. They may actually pick up the phone if you have the premium phone plan in your dealership and make a call to a customer. That could count as a touch. 20 is our magical number for inside salespeople. For our outside salespeople, 8 is what our minimum is. Now, when we set up touches for our salespeople, what we typically do is we tie their base pay to the number of touches that they commit to making on a daily basis. So let's say that we have a salesperson who says, I'm committing to 20 customer touches every single day. That means in most cases that we would give this salesperson a base of $400 every week. If they said, I'm going to commit to 30 touches every single day, we typically give them a $500 base. And if they commit to 40 touches every day, we'll typically give them a $600 base. But as an owner or manager, your salespeople can talk a good game, which is why they are salespeople. But sometimes what your focus is going to have to be in the midst of this stability is following up with them and making sure they're actually making the touches. This does not have to be complex. It can be as simple as a legal pad with the name of the customer they talked to, what they talked to them about, and how they were in contact with them. Again, It doesn't have to be complex. But I know that if you want to create stability inside of your sales department, a process that will do more than just about anything else is the ability to start tracking touches. We were working with a dealership in New Orleans, and they were a big old dealership that we've been working with, and they had a brand new salesperson come onto their team. We'll call this dealership ABC Dealership. This brand new salesperson came onto their team. He had never done sales before, but he was real excited to be selling for this dealership. He came in for the first day. The owner called us and said, "Where do I get him started?" We said, "What we need you to do is pull the list of all of the customers who've bought from you in the last 5 to 7 years. That's what we want to look at. I want this salesperson to start being committed to making 20 touches a day." And so he started picking up the phone and saying, "Hi, this is Jim from ABC Dealership, and I'm new here. The owner asked me to reach out and just see how you were doing and if there was anything we could help you with." Over the course of that year, in a commitment to 20 touches a day, he was able to do $1 million in sales off of the list of customers who had bought from them in the last 5 to 7 years. Stability in your service department, sales department is possible. But it's so incredibly important that we are measuring the touches of our salespeople. So once we realize we have stability in a department, and that regardless of what the growth that happens is, that it's just an accelerant to what we're doing and not a deterrent that will only result in a crash, we can move to the place of growth. As we think about growth inside of our dealerships, I think it's so incredibly important to know that without stability, growth is going to just cause you burnout, frustration, and more problems. I'm sure you've been experienced this before, where there's been a quick amount of growth in a very short period of time and you were not set for it. But if you have that stability, if you have those processes in place and you are ready for growth, when we pour the fuel on the fire, it will allow you and your dealership to reach new heights and experience growth that you didn't even know was possible. So let's start with growth in service. If we are at a place where we have stability in our service department, we have our technicians clocking in and clocking out of work orders consistently. When we talk about growth, we're going to talk about making sure that everyone is being used to their full potential. What do I mean by that? I mean that inside of your service department, we want to make sure that every single one of your technicians is being used to the maximum of their capacity. Let's say, for an example, that you have a technician and they have the capacity to make you $100 an hour because that's what your labor rate is. Why in the world would you make the decision to have them sweeping floors, cleaning up other pieces of the service department, loading and unloading trailers, checking for things in the lots, talking to the parts department? Why in the world, if they had the capacity to make you $100 every single hour, would you have them doing anything that you could have a low-level person doing for your dealership? It just doesn't make sense. We need to make sure that we are utilizing them to their maximum capacity. When we talk about technicians, we talk about them like they are surgeons in an operating room. Inside of a hospital, there are a lot of other people who come alongside surgeons so that surgeons can do what they do best: operate. You don't see a surgeon taking the blood pressure or temperature of a patient before they go back to surgery. They're not there checking their health insurance card to make sure that the procedure's covered. They're not there cleaning the room up after the surgery. No, all a surgeon does is they go from surgery to surgery to surgery. It should be the same situation in your service department. Your technicians need to go from repair to repair to repair. All I want your technicians doing all day long is turning a wrench. So we are going to bring other people into our dealership to allow our technicians to be used to their full potential. One position in particular that we typically hire is one we call a service coordinator. The service coordinator is someone who comes alongside your technicians and allows them to be used to their full potential. They're the person who cleans the units off before it comes into the service department. They're the person who brings it in and makes it set for triage so that the technicians can start communicating with the parts department before they actually need the part. When it's ready to be repaired, the service coordinator is the person there who's offering the extra set of hands. The service coordinator is also helping load and unload things for the customers. We don't take our technicians off of their work in order to do all of these other things, just like we wouldn't take a surgeon out of an operation to make sure that you're checking somebody else's health insurance card. It just doesn't make sense. When we work with a dealership to start staffing a service department, we typically hire a technician first, but the second hire we always make is a service coordinator, because we know that our best bet is to make our technician as efficient as possible. And the only way we can do that is by making sure there's someone there to support them. So if we are in a place where we're ready to see growth in our service department, start by asking the question, could I hire a service coordinator to accelerate the growth? Now, in our parts department, when we are ready for growth, the conversation that we need to have is around skills called upselling and cross-selling. Upselling and cross-selling are skills that you can teach your parts people in order to grow your parts sales. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to McDonald's before, but I'm a mom of 3 young kids and I have fed them chicken nuggets on more times than I'd like to admit. Judge me. But here's what I know. Every time I drive through McDonald's to get my drink of choice, which is a Diet Coke, God bless America, I go through and they say, would you like to make that a meal? What they're saying is, ma'am, you're coming through to order a Diet Coke. But typically when people order a Diet Coke, they don't just order a Diet Coke. They also order a cheeseburger and French fries. They say, if you're going to order this and you want to have the best experience possible, you're going to want the cheeseburger and French fries as well. What they're doing is something called cross-selling. If you bought this, most of the time people also buy this and this. One of the companies, a small little company outside of Seattle, Washington, has this down to an art form. Small company, you may not have ever heard of them before, called Amazon. And when you go onto Amazon to make your purchase, what typically happens is you go through the checkout page and at the bottom of it, it says, people who bought whatever it is you bought, your 400 pounds of beef jerky, also bought this, this, and this. What Amazon has come to find out is that 30% of all of the revenue that Amazon.com produces comes because of that box at the bottom. People like you also bought X, Y, and Z. Inside of your parts department, this is something I want you laser focused on, because my guess is at your parts counter, there are typically other things that people who are buying what you customer is buying have bought as well. We often joke that this is the concept of when you go to a home improvement store because your spouse has asked you to work on a project the weekend, how many times do you have to go back to that store over and over and over again? The joke in our office is it typically takes at least 3 trips to the local Home Depot or Lowe's to be able to finish the project. How excited are your customers when they have to come back over and over and over again? Their excitement goes down the more times they're in your dealership. So when we talk about cross-selling, saying people like you who come in for this, typically also buy this and this, not only are we increasing our parts growth, but we're also creating a better customer experience. Now, when I drove through McDonald's and asked to order a Diet Coke, the other question that I'm typically asked in the drive-thru is, would you like to make this a large, or would you like to supersize it, is what they used to say. What they're saying as I drive through McDonald's is saying, people like you, ma'am, who is buying your Diet Coke, typically like to have a better experience if you make it a larger size. For just a little bit more money, you can have a better experience. Inside of your parts department, this is an incredible, powerful strategy to grow your parts sales. Because we can say people who buy this product typically have a better experience if they buy something just a little bit better. Upselling and cross-selling is an education experience for your customers. Depending on your business management system, some of them have it already built in, so it will help you give you parts that you can cross-sell and upsell to your customers. While some of them don't, it's something that if we want to grow our parts department is a great place to start. Parts growth without holding our margins is a disaster waiting to happen. But if we can grow our parts department and our parts sales through upselling and cross-selling, all while maintaining our margins, it allows you to ignite the fire that is already growing in what you're doing in your parts department. Now, as we talk about growth in sales, the thing I want you to keep in mind is that we accelerate the sales that are happening by adding marketing money 4 to 6 weeks before you need to see the sales. By this, I mean, if we know that we need to see a bulk of our sales happen in March, when we are going to spend our marketing money on this is not the first day of March when we need to see the sales. No, young grasshopper, that's not what we're doing. What we need to do is we need to say 4 to 6 weeks before March 1st, I need to see the sales happening. So that would mean at the beginning of February or the end of January, that's when we're going to be spending our marketing money so that 4 to 6 weeks later on March 1st, we're able to see the sales come together. But you can't do that without being proactive in your planning. And when would you do that? In your 1 hour. Typically what we see happen is that owners and managers become so reactive in marketing specifically. You go, oh, it's March 1st. I'm not seeing the sales I need to see. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna throw marketing money on it. Darn it, the marketing money didn't work. Must not have worked. Marketing must be the worst. Listen, what you're doing is you're throwing marketing money in the air and hoping that it works. Hope is not a strategy when it comes to marketing. Planning, focus, and working your plan are strategies, but hope inside of marketing is not a strategy that we go by. 4 to 6 weeks before you need to see the sales is when we need to start marketing for the sales. In those moments, when we have a plan and we are working the plan, the sales will come. But we can't be reactive marketing and say, oh, I don't know why this didn't work. It must have been bad marketing. No, it was bad planning. To see sustained growth in sales, let's make the decision that we're going to put a marketing strategy in place and we're going to follow the strategy that is not reliant on hope. Now, the last piece of this conversation comes around the piece of accountability. So I want you to take just a second and look at your list. In the first column, we had our, as we talked about, our stability. In that first column, look at your list and say, where were the areas that I needed to work on stability? The next one was growth, where every department achieved growth. The last piece of the puzzle is what we call accountability. Accountability by department is how you sustain your growth and how you develop your people. All of the dealerships that we highlight in our book, You're the Problem and the Solution, have a component of their time management that comes down to accountability. Because they know that while there is stability and there is growth, the only way they can maintain both growth and stability inside of their departments is by having accountability. And initially, I get that the idea of accountability by your departments is something that might send chills up and down your spine, and I get that. But what also I do know is that if we want to be pushing for this growth and this sustained growth over time, it doesn't happen by accident. You, as an owner or manager alone, cannot sustain the growth and stability of each department. You need to bring other people into the conversation, invite them into the conversation. You go, but Sarah, but what if I don't know all the answers? But Sarah, what if they realize I don't know what I'm talking about? But Sarah, listen, don't but Sarah me. What I know is that what you are trying to do matters. What you are trying to do of reclaiming your sanity and your time is of the utmost importance, and that all successful dealers that we work with have a good control on their time. And it's not because they have some magical planner. It's because they make it a priority and they work consistently on bringing their people into the conversation. In the midst of developing accountability, it's so important for you to understand that your people will view you as their standard of how to do this. When we bring our people into the fold, into the conversation about how we are doing things and why they're important, your people will start acting the way you do about things. In the midst of being a leader in your organization, your people will come up to your standard. And if we are not opening the doors, opening the conversations for them to join us, it's all going to just come back on you. And you're going to be back in the exact same place you are because you've got the stability, you've got the growth, but you haven't brought anybody else in to help you. So let's open up the conversations around accountability inside of each department. If you have maintained stability and growth in service, where do you start? In accountability with service, we are talking about regular conversations with your team about numbers, and that will allow you to hold the growth trajectory that you are on. Think about it this way. There is a slew of numbers that your service department needs to have as a fluent second language. Things like recovery rate, efficiency, and a whole bunch of other numbers need to become a second language for you and your team. This can't happen unless you open up the numbers and let them know where things are at. The other thing that's so incredibly important as we talk about accountability in service is that they need to know what you're trying to achieve and strive for. If your people feel like you are just constantly pushing them to try to strive for more, strive for more, strive for more, and they never see the finish line, they too, just like you, would be burnt out in an instant. As a result, open up the conversation to them in a way that allows them to be in the depths of it, understand the numbers that we're measuring, and know how they're doing. I can't tell you the amount of times we've worked with owners and managers who say they know what recovery rate is, they know what efficiency is, and they know what our goal is, but they don't know how they're doing. Inside of your service department, it is up to you and you alone to make sure that you are constantly feeding this information back to them. Many times when we have dealerships at this place of accountability and service, the service manager or the owner, depending on the size of your organization, will have a daily meeting with the service department to make sure that they know where they were on recovery and efficiency every single day. That's right, every single day. They have the accountability of where they were and where they're trying to go, and there is no confusion in the gap of how to actually get there. The next department of parts, if we're ready for accountability in parts, we've got our margins where they need to be. We've got those dialed in. We're upselling and cross-selling to help increase our growth. The next piece is accountability. Now, specifically when we talk about parts, we have a really interesting situation that we get to deal with. Because in the parts department, we have what's the equivalent of a giant bank vault full of $100 bills or gold bars or whatever you want to call it. But inside of this vault is all of this cash that you so desperately need during slow season. And the only thing that typically gets in the way between you and this incredible cash is a plan to actually turn it into cash. Here's what I mean. In the midst of your busiest time of the year or the peak of your season, I want you in your 1 hour a day to start coming up with a plan to burn down your parts inventory. Your focus should be to take your parts inventory to 30% of where it was at the peak of your season. So by the time you get to your slow season, instead of parts, what you have sitting in your dealership is cash. Well, maybe you don't put it in your dealership, but in your bank account. You know what I mean. I've never met an employee of a dealership who said they would rather have parts in lieu of a paycheck. They never say, you know what, I know I worked a little overtime this week, I'll just go ahead and take a part for that. No, they want cash. And so as an owner or a manager, what happens in this situation is that you have to then go into your credit line, even though you've got this bank vault full of $100 bills sitting back there, you just haven't had the accountability in place to start burning it down so that you have cash. The other thing that happens is that you typically have the opportunity when you have less inventory to make better purchasing decisions as you move into your peak season again. Whether that's through your manufacturer or another vendor, they give you the opportunity when you buy in bulk to get parts dating and discounts on parts. Now, just to be clear, parts dating is not an app that manufacturers put together to help you find romantically involved parts managers. No, that's not what it is. But it allows you to utilize their money on their terms so that it's not coming out of your bank account and you have cash. Because we know that when we have cash inside of the dealership, it gives us the power to choose. And the choice and power of choosing allows you as an owner or manager to remove chaos, but it comes with accountability. And that's what I want you to focus on in parts. Find a way to start burning down your parts at the peak of your busiest season. And by the time you get to your slow season, I want you to have 30% of the parts that you had at the top of your peak season. This involves you going into your business management software, if you have one, setting your mins and maxes to start burning that down. We want to do this at the peak of our season because we know that we will have more customers coming in. And most of the parts we have the ability to get in 24 hours if need be. There is one powerful tool that allows you to regain control of your cash and your time. It is this. Think through a burn down strategy for your parts department. In sales, when we talk about accountability, we know that to get to this point, we need stability. We're making sure that our salespeople are tracking their touches with their customers. We know that we're putting the marketing money and plan in place. We're not just hoping that marketing is going to work out. The piece of accountability in sales is that sometimes our salespeople can get a little bit lazy. We've got to find ways to not only make sure that we're getting the leads in, but that we are actually utilizing the leads like we need to utilize the leads. This comes through proper use of a CRM. A CRM is a great accountability step for your sales department. Now, some of you may have a CRM already built into your business management software. That is great. Awesome, use that. You don't need to do a third-party one. If you don't, start thinking about a third-party CRM at this point. What a CRM does is it allows you to accelerate in this continued growth of what's happening in your sales department. It's again that fuel for the fire that allows our sales department to continue making the sales that they need in order to grow the sales department. So when we talk about a CRM, it's so important to know that the only way to get good information out of a CRM is to put good information in. It's like any piece of technology. You can't expect it to magically know what's happening in the minds of your salespeople. Your salespeople have to have standards in place to put that information in. What we see is that salespeople who are in this stage of accountability with a CRM specifically are taking this to the next level, and they're able to put alerts on customers who are interested in a specific unit so that when that unit comes through your dealership, it makes an alert and that person is able to accelerate the sales process because of the accountability. Does it take time? Does it take money? Does it take energy to make this happen? Absolutely it does. But your results that you will have in sustained growth because of this step of accountability is vital for your health as a dealer. Here's what I know. All of this starts with 1 hour. All of it starts with the decision that you are going to become proactive instead of reactive in your time management. All of this starts with you saying it is a priority to me that I reclaim my sanity and my time. And as a result, you make the decision that you are going to spend 1 hour every day to reclaim your sanity and your time. When we make this decision, it makes your dealership better. As an owner or a manager of the dealership, you are constantly pushing on where you're trying to go. You're constantly pushing on how you're going to get there, the strategy. And you're constantly trying to figure out who am I going to develop to take me where I'm going. And I get that what you're doing is not easy. But I also understand that if you have an incredible vision that you're moving towards, You have a strategy in place to take you there, and you are developing the people you need along the way. What you need is something to create this stability, growth, and accountability. And it all starts with making the decision that you are going to spend 1 hour a day, every day, to reclaim your sanity, your life, and your dealership. Because you, my friend, are the problem, but you're also the solution.